symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Arn. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, the founder of the Four Horsemen, the creator of the Spine Buster. He is AA. He is Arn Anderson. Arn, how are you, man?
Well, I missed you, buddy. It's been a minute.
I'm excited to be back with you, dude. We got the band back together today.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, the way you scramble and fit the pieces together and make everything fly is a miracle. And Paul did a great job filling in for you. There for a month. Always a pleasure doing business with him. Understand you had a great vacation down in Florida. Well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you.
You did a little bit of schmoozing with the missus, I'm pretty sure.
Man, I'm in good graces right now. It's a good place to be.
I don't know if you could, taking her down there, as we know, is the most beautiful beach probably in the world.
Yeah.
It's just short of giving her a big stack of cash.
Yeah. And knowing her, she's probably figured out a way to do that too. So,
she got that, whether you take her to the beach or not.
Well, man, I'm excited to talk about JCP. You guys have been talking about these last few weeks, the end of 1987, and we're going to put a bow on it today, December 1987. And we are, man, just right behind the Starrcade event. And that Starrcade event, what a show it was. I think a lot of folks left that show thinking that maybe the Road Warriors were the tag champs. And now you and Tully can't wait to get on TV and show ass a little bit about, hey, we still got the belts. In hindsight, I think a lot of folks probably felt like Starrcade 87 was maybe the beginning of the end. Did you feel that way? That Starrcade 87 is maybe when the tide started to turn a little bit for you guys?
I knew that if we walked out of there, whether or not we had a helicopter come through the ceiling or we had the National Guard show up or whatever the ridiculous scenario, if we walked out of there tag champions, we were going to have a stronger company the next day.
Yeah.
Because nobody, and I'm talking nobody, gave us one chance.
Yeah.
Road Warriors, their hometown.
Yeah.
They were peaking as far as being big stars. We were red hot. Chicago, what a market, was really building into something special for the wrestling industry. And it was just, all the stars were coming into alignment. I knew it was going to be a big deal.
So now with Starrcast or Starrcade, easy for me to say, just very recently in the rear view, when do you guys start hearing, hey man, McMahon screwed us around? Just to add context here, 1987 is such a landmark year for professional wrestling. Wrestlemania 3 effectively changed a lot of things. It caused Jim Crockett to hit the panic button and finish his purchase of Bill Watts UWF. And Lord knows we've talked about that a little bit recently. But at the same time, he's now saying, I've got to find a way to placate my guys. And a lot of the guys in the business are looking around saying, hey, I want one of those WrestleMania paydays. Hey, I want one of those LJN dolls. You're hearing all these rumors about guys getting big paydays for these type of opportunities. And that's just really not readily available with JCP. So he says, hey, hang with me. We won't have one big show as big as WrestleMania maybe, but through a collection of shows that we'll call pay-per-view extravaganzas, you'll make more staying with us. And the first opportunity for that big vision was Starrcade. And of course, we know Vince McMahon sabotaged it. But how much did you know as a talent who's making towns? Because that's recall, right? That's hindsight. But as a guy who's living it, who's packing his bag and hitting the road every single day, did you know a few days after Starrcade, a week later, a month later? When did you know, damn it, McMahon screwed us?
I guess I was just so far removed from the day-to-day bean counter end of the business. Mm-hmm. I just knew business was good.
Yes.
And when you were a wrestler in those days, if you were smart, you kind of kept up with, okay, let me eyeball this.
Yeah.
I know what that house is. That's just going to be a good payday for you, because every single night you didn't have an event coordinator coming back telling you what the house was.
Right.
It just wasn't that way. You'd ask them, how's the house? And they'd say, good. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Or not so good, or average, or it's down, or it's up. But, we just knew that we were now, Tully and I were being used better than we ever were, probably with that company. I would think, stealing a win from the Road Warriors and heading forward, we had nothing but positive aspirations, and we knew we were going to be positioned well. We knew we had something special in that team, and it wasn't a situation where we're sitting there just harping on, hey, Vince clipped our legs out from under us with his dealings. We left that to the office, or at least I did, because it was such a foreign language to me.
And really, that's really the story for a lot of folks. I mean, it's hard for us to imagine now, because Lord knows we can all just pick up our remote and just bam, okay, I got a pay-per-view coming. In reality, back then, and it was a totally different animal. First of all, not everybody had access to pay-per-view. There were only certain areas of the country that could even do this sort of thing. And then when they could, man, you had to get down to your cable provider before the close of business on Friday to get a little gimmick to screw into the back of your TV on Sunday. So it's a totally different thing here. But Vince McMahon straight up sabotaged Starrcade and made a lot of those cable systems decide, do I want Wrestlemania, or do I want to roll the dice with these new guys? Because Vince created Survivor Series directly to compete, but you, as one of the boys, I mean, you're just doing what you always do. Well, looks like we're sold out. Looks like a lot of folks in here probably expecting a pretty good payday. But I think it's that event where you started to have some hurt feelings based on the payoff, right?
Well, you started hearing about that, and it did make you think, because, Vince was in his courting stage. He wasn't this, or didn't come across as this power hungry mongrel that was just really, more than willing and able to steamroll the rest of the business. He was courting talent. He was sending messages out all the time. By this point in time, I'd already had a couple of messages from Barry Darsow, so general that, we were just friends. We were talking on the phone, and he was doing well, Demolition, making money, kicking ass. He was, boy, Vince sure does like you guys. And that's all he would say. He would say something like that, and it would just be, I would either respond to it or I wouldn't. We would just move on with our conversation. But he was smart. He was throwing those little feelers out, I'm sure, to every top talent in every territory around the world. And he was assembling this all-star team.
Do you think that, boy, I don't really mean to position Vince as like the puppeteer here, but do you think he actively went to Darsow and said, hey, just feel them out, see what they say? Or do you think Barry is like, man, I sure would like to work with those guys?
Could have been half and half. It could have been, he could have, sent that to Jack Lanza, who turned around and just mentioned it, your buddy Arn and Tully are doing good down there, huh? They happy? Could have been something that simple coming from Jack. I don't really know the exact avenue. I'm sure it wasn't Vince just calling Barry going, hey, see if you can get Blanchard and Anderson up here. I'm sure that wasn't the case, but it was just enough to make you think. But I also was smart enough to know, and I can't emphasize this enough, during this particular time when we had those private planes, and you're looking at the schedule, which we run through here on this podcast every week, and you start visualizing the country and what it took to get from A to B to C to F to G, it was, those private planes were worth their weight in platinum. Because I was smart enough to also hear, man, these guys are making killer money, but you know what? They're so dead, they don't care because they've been out 56 days. And you would start to hear those stories, and, And then I'd look at my check and go, okay, I'm on a private plane. I'm not dealing with airports. I'm going to be home X number of days, at least at night. And I got a pretty good gig here because we were making money, and it was a good gig. It wasn't what top guys for Vince were making, but I've never worried about what anybody else made in this business, Conrad. That's what sustained me. That's how I've been able to survive all these years. I never made top money, but I made a pretty good living for a long time. And that's how you rationalize it. And it doesn't matter what anybody else makes, as long as I'm having a pretty nice lifestyle and I'm taking care of myself and my family. That was good enough.
So talk to me about timeline. You know, you and I talked about this, Lord, way back at the beginning of our podcast venture together, but there becomes a moment where you're pretty disappointed in the payoff here that you get for Starrcade. I mean, that wouldn't have been something you would have got in December. Would it have been?
I don't even remember what that payoff was.
I just remember it was half. I think you were expecting it to be 25 and it was 12.5 or some such. And it was still a great payday. But the reality was you were like, well, he told me it would be this. So I often say in business and just in life in general, the key to life is managing expectations. And if you had an expectation based on a conversation you had with Mr. Crockett, we're talking about Jim, not David. And he says, hey, you know, I understand, but we're going to take care of you on this one. It's going to be 25 grand. And then you get it and it's half. Well, without the context of everything that Vince did, I could see why you and Tully were upset. So we've talked about that before. I don't mean to beat a dead horse about it, but I'm just trying to understand as we're talking about December of 87 here today, would it have happened in December, do you think, or would it have happened at a later time?
I'm not even sure, but it was, he did, you know, it. And here's how blurred I am at this point of getting dropped on my head in my career. I wasn't sure this was the payoff that was in question. Correct? It wasn't this was our first quote pay-per-view with Jim Crockett.
Yeah. And your last match is going to take place September 10th.
So that being said, Jimmy did come up and he pulled me in the bathroom, and that's usually reserved for when two guys are fixing to get in a fist fight. But he just said, hey, you know, Arn, you've been doing a great job. I really appreciate all the hard work, I'm going to pay you this for the pay-per-view. This was way before there were any numbers in or any houses or any tickets sold or any finishes went down or any of that stuff. It was just, so that's what I hung my hat on. And again, that reinforced, I could care less about what they're making up north. You know, that's going to be good. But when they volunteer that, and then they come to you with, and it was less than half, it was 11.7.
Okay.
Shows you how shitty my math is. But, you know, and I go, well, that's not what I was told. And he goes, listen, business is bad. You guys have been great. He says, all I'm asking is hang in here with me and I will make that up to you. Checks in the mail. Paint's drying. It'll be drying a little bit later, come back later, whatever the excuse is. It's not good enough. When you volunteered it, my mind at that point, I suddenly went from team player to, hey, when you get my expectations up, and I actually went home and told, you know, I'm pretty sure I told Aaron about this in advance, which I would have normally never done until I had it in my hand, but it was biggest thing that ever happened to me in the business.
So you were excited, shared that with your wife. So now you got a little egg on your face too. Yeah.
And if I did, boy, did I look stupid. And boy, would she have gotten mad, because she's always been very protective of me. Even when most of the time I can protect myself. Sometimes she's and I go, okay, this is where I should say no. And she'll go, listen, just let it go. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. She calms me down. And then there's times where she goes, no, F that. They're treating you wrong. Stand up for yourself. It's bullshit. Well, the only reason I wasn't standing up for myself in some of these situations is I was protecting them, because once I kind of get rolling with the anger, it's a little difficult to reel it in. So I try not to ever get there.
Just to add context to what you're saying, I'm trying to take care of them. You mean your family. The idea being, I don't want to be a hothead and make myself feel better, but really I'm the breadwinner here. I'm the provider. So if I do that, I'm doing more than just hurting my career. I'm hurting their lifestyle. And so I'm going to just keep that to myself and try to keep my anger in check. Right.
100%. I wish I could have said it that well. You just, let your ego go. It's still more money than I probably deserve.
Right.
And will ever make in any other line of work, no matter where I am. It's for also, that's for 30 minutes work. That's the way you got to look at it.
That's right.
So anyway, it was around this time that you started some of those conversations, man. They're on fire up north, and there was just a little bit of a different tempo when all the guys were getting their Starrcade checks, and I'm sure a lot of them were not nearly as good as mine. I think that we would have probably got those just 90 days out.
Yeah, that's the thing. So you and the guys, the roster, y'all didn't have any inclination that this is going to be disappointing until well into the new year. You wouldn't have known the next month.
Could have been, I want to say it was 90 days.
Yeah.
And we understand that they said they had to collect.
Yes.
The cable companies had to collect their revenue, sort it out, and then you would get paid off of it. And I believe that was correct with Vince and everybody across the board. That was more of a cable thing than it was a Crockett or a McMahon thing.
That's correct. Yeah. I mean, even when we've done, our Starrcast events in the past, it does run on a delay. But without any further delay, let's jump into it. We've done enough of our preamble. Let's talk about December 1st. You're doing a TV taping for Worldwide here. It's going to air on December 5th, but you taped it on the 1st in Monroe, Louisiana. And of course, you're out there strutting around with those tag titles and doing interviews with Bob Caudle and the rest of the Horsemen, saying, hey, we must be the best because we've got the belts. And then on Pro, this same day, you're going to do a TV taping there. Well, we actually get a little physicality here. Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin are going to go to a disqualification in a non-title match around 7 minutes in when Blanchard hit Hayes with JJ shoe as Hayes had you covered after hitting a bulldog. And then after the contest, the Freebirds are going to clear the champions from the ring, and then we go to commercial break. But this is really the first time that you've been in a prime time spot like this with this combination of Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin. Of course, Jimmy Garvin has been a staple as far as what we're doing in JCP for a couple of years at this point. But Michael Hayes, probably most famous for his run with the Freebirds. Now we're getting maybe a new duo here. What do you think of that combination of the Freebirds, Hayes and Garvin?
Well, it's always hard to replicate, the original, and the original Freebirds were something special. But Jimmy Garvin's a good hand. And, when they had Precious with them, she was special too. They had that chemistry. But Jimmy and Michael made a good team. You got to remember now, Monroe, Louisiana, that's Freebird country. That's part of the Dallas area where they got that good TV coming in there all that time. And I just kind of look at where guys were over around the country. If you were booked with guys that were from Watts territory, if you were booked with JYD and Louisiana, you were golden. I think that kind of gave us an edge as far as interest, that being Monroe, even though I'm sure that market was on its ass like the rest of the company that we bought. Louisiana was on its ass. It was down. No other way to say it. I don't know what we bought.
I just love the phrase. It was on its ass like everything else we bought. You're not wrong, though. Let's talk about the TV taping the next day. December 1st, you're doing TV in Miami, Florida at the Knight Center. There's 2,000 fans on hand. And boy, something really cool happens here. Lex Luger wins a Bunkhouse Stampede, last eliminating J.J. Dillon. Now, let's set the stage here. Ricky Santana was eliminated by Luger, and then Tully Blanchard eliminates himself, and then you eliminate yourself. And then you climb up on the apron and tell Luger, hey, take a dive like the rest of us so JJ can win. Well, that doesn't happen. After the match, Luger press slams Blanchard. He drops you with a power slam, and then he puts you in the torture rack. And a few minutes later, Tully Blanchard's going to hit Luger in the back of the knee with a steel chair before everybody gangs up on Luger's leg here. And the Florida heavyweight champion, Mike Rotunda, and others come out to make the save. But here's this fella who's starting the year as one of the Horsemen, and now he's not going along with the script here. What do you remember about this bit?
Well, in the buildup, you know, if you go back and watch the previous month, Luger was kind of wanting to step up to the forefront and was wanting to talk about Lex more than he was wanting to talk about the Horsemen and his aspirations about doing movies and commercials and all those things. It was more of a me situation. But if you knew Lex from the day one, we met him and we started talking to him about his, his previous career as far as playing pro football and college and football and all these things he had done before. He had aspirations of himself going, to be a big star in Hollywood, which in this business, if you don't have an ego, you're lost. You're not going to succeed very much. But we were listening to those little, cracks between the lines and him kind of stepping up and taking interview time when it wasn't really structured that way and little things like that. So Lex let us know early on that he knew what he was. He knew what the product was. That body was the product, and he was going to push it and as far as he could.
I just love that story of Tully throws himself out. You throw yourself out. Hey, we're doing this for JJ. He's not going along with it. I think we've seen something like that with Sting. We'll talk about that next year here on the program. Let's talk about the next day, though. Boy, what a busy December. Again, to recap, December 1st, you're in Monroe, Louisiana doing TV. The next day on the 2nd, you're in Miami doing TV. And on the 3rd, well, you're in Atlanta doing TV. Now, this is notable, not because you and Tully beat up Gary Royal and the Italian Stallion, but because it's Jim Ross's debut as a host. And Jim Ross has finally found his opportunity to be a part of the big time. Now, that's not to say that what he did with Watts was irrelevant. That's not the case. But now he's on the big program on WTBS. And that was December 5th, 1987. And man, he never left. All these years later in 2022, he's back on TBS. What did you think of Jim Ross joining the show? Obviously it's a pivot. You've been around some great broadcasters. You spent a little time working with Gordon Soley, spent a lot of time working with Tony Schiavone, obviously a lot of time with David Crockett, but now you get a flavor for Jim Ross. Back then, what did you think of Jim?
Very professional, very learned, very astute in knowing everyone's background. And he was somebody new and fresh. I grew up, I don't think JR will get mad at me for saying this, or Tony will, I grew up on Gordon Soley. Gordon Soley was just like the Omni was my holy grail. Gordon Soley was the voice of wrestling. Then Tony Schiavone became that voice. Now JR stepping in, he's new, he's fresh, had a different style. And I just went, wow, where's this guy been? And the answer was he'd been working for Bill Watts. JR actually asked me in the locker room, this past week, he said, well, do you remember me back when you very first started? When I started as Marty Lundy, before I was ever Arn Anderson, when I very first started, JR was doing the commentary, partially on that show.
Wow.
And I didn't remember. I remember Boyd Pierce being one of the voices, but I didn't remember JR. That's on me. That's from getting dropped on my head. But we kind of had that conversation. But JR is very, very good at what he does. People take him for granted because he is so good.
It's such a storied career, man. But the beat goes on for you on December 5th. You guys are running a show in Lakeland, Florida. On December 6th, you're back in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's a matinee show at the Coliseum. It's going to be a TV taping. The mighty Wilbur is going to defeat Arn Anderson. Of course, after the bout, Tully and Arn are going to double team Wilbur. Lex Luger is going to make the save and clear the ring. But talk to me about Mighty Wilbur. This is a pretty big moment. We never saw you lose on TV. And here it is, the Mighty Wilbur.
I do not keep a one-loss record, nor do I worry about spilt milk. This is one coming off the heels of beating the piss out of Luger. Just less than a week before that, you probably would have went the other way. Arn Anderson kicks the shit out of the Mighty Wilbur. Wouldn't you think?
I would think so, but now, by the way, if you're listening to this and for whatever reason you're not familiar with Mighty Wilbur, I encourage you to Google image him, because if my fat ass put on some overalls, we could be related. And
his wallet is not pulling them down in the back like yours is. You got an ass crack, not because you have no ass, it's because your wallet is heavier than hell.
Oh gosh, listen to you.
Yeah, Wilbur had not established himself. He was not a huge star at that point. He was big guy, moved, you'll hear this from time to time, moved good for a big guy. It doesn't mean he moved good. It just meant he moved good for a big guy. Probably should have went the other way. This is one of those times when you look at it now, so far down the road, and you realize how the company went and the decisions they made and the talent made and all those things. This could have been one of those things in my thought process a few months down the road where I look back and went, and you know what? That was some stupid shit too. Way back then. It's not the focal point now, but it might have added, to the negativity and the different thought process. When you start to scrape all those things together and you put them in a pile in front of you, you go, hey, you know what? They are shitting on me. I hadn't thought about it, but you look at it all in one, on one table, this piece, that piece, this piece, that piece. That could have been one.
So the dark match that day, there's two in Charlotte. It's a matinee show again on December 6th. It's the Road Warriors and Paul Ellering taking on JJ Dillon, Arn, and Tully. I really like that. These badass monsters and their manager against maybe the biggest, best finesse team and their manager. What'd you think of those six mans with Paul on their side and JJ on you guys' side?
This was that same day?
Same day.
Well, the intelligent Arn Anderson goes, what would lead any logical thinking person to believe if I can't beat the Mighty Wilbur, that we're going to beat the Road Warriors?
Well, it turns out you didn't. Surprise, the Road Warriors won.
Wow, that was a shocker.
I bet you didn't see that coming.
And they have the same body. They have the same experience. They're all over the same. Well, let's say that was just another one of those things you could have did without putting Mighty Wilbur over. Even if it was a DQ until he came in with the shoe and we beat him up, anything would have prepared you at least for the match that you had later on, because that was still, especially coming off of Starrcade, that's a marquee match.
What a day you had here too. Because you're going to work a night show. Before we talk about the night show, we see Ric Flair wrestle Sting here in a matinee main event in Charlotte, North Carolina. Steve obviously or Sting rather, had come over as part of this transition from the UWF. But prior to this, he hadn't really been working on top. He had been working with Larry Zbyszko, second from the top, or Cougar J in an easy win. But the idea that all of a sudden now he's in a freaking main event in Charlotte with Ric Flair. What were you guys saying about Sting behind the scenes? Did you know, hey man, this kid's young, but boy, he's got something special? Because somebody saw it for him to be going on last year, right? By the way, just to add context, the Clash of the Champions match that everybody talks about that made Sting, that was the following year. That's 1988. This is December of 87. So this is probably Maybe not the first time he's been in the main event, but I think it's the first time he's in the main event against Ric Flair as the NWA World Champion.
In a main event dark match, correct?
Yes.
Yes. I think it was a tester. I think when Sting walked in the room, you could tell the way he carried himself. Now, this is the pre aquamarine bright leather outfits that he wore, and the real cool, once he mastered the paint, the tan. This was the beginning version of Sting. But everybody that knew what they were talking about from a talent perspective looked at him and went, that kid's got something. You looked at him, you looked at Rick Steiner, you looked at Dr. Death Steve Williams, the good that came from Watts territory. I mean, there were some players that came out of there, and Sting was one of them. You just could see the way he carried himself. Now, we knew he was going to have to get in ring shape, because top baby faces during that era, you better be ready to go. Everybody could go, no matter what you thought of Dusty. If you needed 30 minutes, he could give you 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It would be at a Dusty Rhodes pace, and it would be his type match. But if need be, he could do it. All your baby faces could do it at that time, because you can't. The worst thing in the world, and I mean, if you go back and look at some real stinkers throughout history, match wise, it was because the babyface blew up. As a heel, you can't make a guy beat you up. If he can't breathe, you're screwed. So we saw that he was going to get, not that he was in terrible shape then, and Rick will push you, but you could tell that he needed, to get in super shape. But there was something there. That was my first inclination.
Well, that same day after you just lost to the Mighty Wilbur and then played a Super Bowl for the Road Warriors, that night you're in the Omni and there's 8,800 people here. A special promotion that day. Upper balcony seats were just $1 for kids. All the other seats were only $5. But buddy, you're pulling double duty here. The Road Warriors are going to beat you and Arn Anderson, or you're Arn Anderson, you and Ric Flair. Arn is substituting for Lex Luger though. So originally this was promoted locally as Flair and Luger versus the Road Warriors. Now we know the story. Luger's on his way out of the Horsemen. So we got to have Arn Anderson in here. Tully Blanchard interferes, but what's interesting is right away that turns into a big match. Arn and Tully with Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane taking on Ricky Morton, Robert Gibson, Chris Champion, and Sean Royal in a cage match. Anderson's going to pin Gibson here, and after the bout, Morton and Gibson and Champion and Royal are all arguing. But still, you work the Road Warriors twice in the same day. They beat you twice in the same day. Mighty Wilbur beat you.
You find that amusing? And
then, oh, by the way, let's put you in an 8-man cage match. Like, God dang, Arn. 4 matches in a day. 2 of them with the Road Warriors. One's a cage match. One's with Wilbur. How much can a man take? It's the same day.
Apparently, I could take that at least. And look inside. You're so flabbergasted being on the inside now, looking out, that you understand what that took from a physical standpoint.
Unbelievable.
Let's just think about something else for a minute. How unusual, how strange is it for us to be tagging with the Midnight Express?
Pretty unusual. What's interesting though is it's been talked about over the years, hypothetical, right? What if the Midnight Express were to join and be part of the 4 Horsemen? That could have been a fun what if, the Midnight Express being part of the presentation.
I love what ifs.
Yeah.
You do too, right?
Oh yeah.
I think you'd have had a super group.
Yeah, absolutely.
And imagine if you would have had JJ and Jim Cornette, not at odds, but playing off of each other and complimenting each other. That could have been one of those deals that you could have had a whole nother run. And it could have been, since you brought it up, and I never even thought about it. And to be honest with you, we kind of talked about this a week or two, ago on the show with Paul. I don't remember that is such a strange booking. I don't even remember it. I don't know if it's I chose to just
Most
freeze it
people
out.
block out painful memories, Arn.
Well, and 4 matches in one day could be painful enough, much less it being a very odd booking because Sean Roll and the other kid were not positioned to be partners with the Rock and Roll Express.
Also, too, let's run through this. You worked back-to-back matches here. I mean, the Road Warriors beat you and Rick. Rick goes to the back. You're staying out here with Tully, and now we're going to do it again. And let's not forget, earlier in the day, the Road Warriors beat you up, and then Mighty Wilbur. I mean, golly, dude, this is a lot for a single. That's a bad week, much less. I mean, that might be the worst day ever.
You know what? You're right. I'm just going to throw this headset off and I'm going to go get, I'm fixing to go get drunk or stoned or something. And I don't even do any of that. Yeah, it was a very taxing day and I can't even remember it, but I could tell you this, just listening to it. Damn. And you know what? You know, the reality, there's not a thing I wouldn't have done for that company on any given day. If it would have been 6 matches, did my best to make it work. But that's such a really odd, it's an odd pairing. And I guess we were just trying to, I guess the thought process was, let's just give these folks in the towns, the best show we can and give them something they hadn't seen. I don't know.
Well, here's what I know. I know there's a very famous man who talked about a very famous event in American history. And he said December 7th is a day that will live in infamy. I think December 6th could be a day that lives in infamy. So this Tuesday, December 22nd, it's a Tuesday, the 6th of December. I think we should all, in honor of Arn Anderson that day, take the day off, just lay on our back and look at the lights all day and think about what it must have been like to have the Mighty Wilbur fall on you, to have Animal fall on you, to have Hawk fall on you, to have Ellering fall on you, then to have Hawk and Animal do it again. What a day. This is the same day. It's unbelievable.
I hate my life.
I mean, I'm glad you lived to tell the tale. And that's the 35th anniversary this year. So maybe that's what we should do. Celebrate the 35th anniversary, Tuesday, December 6th this year. Let's just take off work and lay down and look up and just think, you know what? It could be worse. Wilbur could be falling on me. Animal could be falling on me. It could be worse.
So there will be like people at the George Washington Bridge in New York out of their cars,
Laying down.
laying on their back,
Yep.
staring at the lights.
Yes, sir.
That's a fitting tribute.
I mean, it could be worse, right? That's the thing. Like,
No,
Wilbur
it couldn't.
Not for you
Could it be
then.
worse?
I'm saying for us now. For us now, like we got stresses in our life, right? Our wife's fussing about something, our kid got a C on their report card, whatever. Wilbur ain't falling on you. The Road Warriors ain't beating you up twice in the same doggone day. And then, oh, by the way, go get your ass in this cage match. That's the same day. Like it could be worse. I'm gonna tell you what, when we hang up today, I'm gonna take my ass into the office, sling a bunch of mortgages, and I'm gonna grin doing it because it could be a lot worse.
You know, that could have been the negative peak of my entire career.
I mean, that's when you should have quit right there. Damn the Starrcade payoff. How much more can a man give? Lord.
I should have put on a ski mask, toboggan, and started robbing liquor stores.
Do you realize that you lost more in that day than Shawn Michaels did in 1995?
Plus my integrity.
That was one of those
my
days.
Confidence. And listen, we better go back and check the books. I might have made a chunk of money for that day, but I don't think I did.
Well, the next day, I can't believe this is real. You're wrestling again. This time you're back in Louisiana at the Cajun Dome. It's a 26-man, $26,000 Bunkhouse Stampede match. Darn it, you don't win.
Of course not.
A couple days later, you're at the Centroplex in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, doing TV because why not? It's a worldwide taping here. And once again, you're going to find yourself involved in a Bunkhouse Stampede match. This time, 28 men, $28,000. Come the 9th, we're back on TV. It's WTBS. And we're going to do 2 tapings here. One that'll air on the 12th, one that'll air on the 19th. The episode that airs on the 19th has you and Tully beating Kendall Windham and Denny Brown. There's a little spot show ran at West Caldwell High School on December 10th. And then there's also a television taping happening at the Dorton Arena on December 10th. There's 4,000 fans there. And wouldn't you know it, another Bunkhouse Stampede. This one's won by Michael Hayes. I got to tell you, Arn, I don't know anything about being a wrestler, but all I've heard over the years is that battle royals suck. Bunch of kicks, bunch of punches, bunch of elbows, bunch of forearms. And then one by one, everybody bails out. You have any fun or favorite memories, anything positive you can share with us about a Bunkhouse Stampede, or did they all just suck?
They're all pretty much suck.
Yeah.
You can't have 25 guys fighting in an enclosed space and have it be any more than what you just described safely.
Yeah.
You know, before you throw a punch and that elbow comes back, you better find out who's behind you. You're going to hit somebody in the back of the head. You're going to knock out somebody's teeth. Before you fall down, you better, if you can prevent it, look behind you and make sure you're not on the way down to blow somebody's knee out. There are more precautions you have to take if you're going to do one of those safely than there should be. It's just because it's such a confined space. And let's face it, getting chunked over the top, although it was a bigger bump then than it is now, it really is no big deal.
Right.
If you look at the athleticism in the industry now, just taking a big bump over the top, you know, at one point that was a big deal. Not only was it a disqualification, but in a Bunkhouse Stampede or a Battle Royal, that's the only way you could get eliminated. But they suck.
They suck. Yeah.
They suck. That's it.
Lots of different folks winning these, you know, Big Bubba won one. Lex Luger won one. Michael Hayes won one. Road Warrior Hawk won one. Road Warrior would win his in Baltimore. It's a matinee show on December 12th. That night, you're doing a TV taping in Greensboro. Process what we're talking about, guys. Baltimore is a matinee show. Greensboro is the night show. Two big old arenas, two big old crowds. And here in Greensboro, it's Dusty and Nikita taking on Arn and Tully. They're going to go 9 minutes and 44 seconds before there is a disqualification. You're going to throw Koloff over the top rope. And then afterwards, Flair's going to run out, attack Nikita on the floor. Luger's going to then come running out and chase you backstage. Later that day, same set of TV tapings, but now it's going to be for pro. It's Tully and Arn beating Gary Royal and John Savage. You're going to get the win in a minute and a half with the spine buster and the gourd buster. And then afterwards, do some promos with Bob Caudle at ringside, just really dunking on Lex Luger. So we're trying to advance that storyline. The next day, a TV taping in Albany, Georgia is the matinee event. There's 4,000 fans here on December 13th. It's Dusty and Nikita taking on Arn and Tully. That night, you're in Cincinnati. It's Tully and Arn taking on Dusty and Nikita. They go to a draw here. And then it looks like there's a bit of a vacation. And I wondered how long you could keep this pace up. Because, again, I just want to run through the towns. December is just, you're shot out of a cannon. Monroe, Louisiana on the 1st. Miami Night Center on the 2nd. Atlanta on the 3rd. Alexandria on the 4th. Hampton, Virginia on the 4th. Lakeland, Florida on the 5th. Matinee on the 6th in Charlotte. That night, we're at the Omni on the 6th. And the 7th, we're at the Cajun Dome in Lafayette. We're also in Greenville, South Carolina, doing a TV taping in Baton Rouge on the 8th. Atlanta TV on the 9th. Spot show on the 10th at a high school in Lenoir. A TV taping in Raleigh on the 10th. And then Baltimore is a matinee show on the 12th. Greensboro on the 12th. Albany on the 13th, Cincinnati on the 13th. So many double shots. And I'm thinking, how long can they keep this pace up? And you guys kind of go dark from the 14th to Christmas Day. And there's a matinee show on Christmas. Actually, a couple of them, one in Greenville, one at the Coliseum, and then Christmas night at the Omni. This was pretty rare that you got a little downtime, but god dang, did you deserve it after running all those double shots. Is this just healing up? Are you trying to take a vacation with the kids? Or are you just going to go chill out at the house and veg out for a few days?
Everybody, I bet you across the board, just stayed home.
Yeah.
It was one of those rare occasions where everybody, I'm sure, think about this. What about the TV crew?
Yeah.
Having to do all that traveling besides the wrestlers.
Yeah.
There's only one way. I went through this in my mind 1,000 times, Conrad, because running back, doing the podcast with you and running back through that career and doing it day by day and week by week and month by month, it's almost humanly possible.
Yeah.
The only way it was possible is everybody was young. When you're in your 20s, you could pull stuff off athletically in any sport, I don't care what it is. Your 20s, you're peaked, and that's the only, we were all young and we're able just to run ourselves to death. And if you could get one 24-hour period of rest, it would patch you up to be able to go out and do it again.
Again, I want to be clear about what I'm fixing to say. I want to talk about these Christmas shows and we'll finish out the year, but I do want to ask, this schedule has wreaked a lot of havoc on a lot of individual guys and unfortunately their families as well. Not just being away, but there becomes a time where guys need some sort of coping mechanism. Because let's be clear, we're not just traveling to these places. When we get there, we're falling down on hard surfaces over and over and over again. And I saw something years ago where they did some sort of science and they tried to break down exactly what sort of impact it was like when a guy took what wrestling fans and wrestlers might call a flat back bump. And they equated it to a 35-mile-an-hour car crash, that it had the same impact on your body as being in a car crash going 35 miles an hour. And you're probably thinking, well, that's not very fast. Next time you're in your car and you're going 35 miles an hour, imagine getting in a crash right then. Now imagine doing that 12 times a match. That's probably a low number if you're wrestling the Road Warriors. It might be 30. But the point is, you're going to do this twice a day in different towns, wake up in a different bed every night. It's a grueling schedule. But I've always been led to believe that a lot of the, for lack of a better word, the pill problem was created in the WWF, not Jim Crockett Promotions, not the other territories. That's not to say that they didn't have their own vices. Guys are blowing off steam with alcohol. Maybe they're drinking a little too much after the shows. Maybe they're having a few beers. Maybe they can keep it between the ditches or whatever. But it felt like once upon a time when the drug testing policy really changed in wrestling and people started to really crack down on that, that's when, well, this is okay because I have a prescription for it. And a lot of the problems that we lost a lot of wrestlers who were at their heyday in the 90s. And it feels like that was a policy change instituted by wrestling where maybe they couldn't have those left-handed cigarettes anymore. But they can take this thing and this will do the trick. And I know in these days, or at least based on what I've heard, the territory days were mostly just alcohol. Did the prescription pill thing, did that really exist on a widespread level in the 80s? Or was that more, like I believe, more of a early to mid 90s thing that probably started when testing started?
100% 90s.
Okay.
80s, it was beer and booze.
Yeah.
When you're having to juggle schedules and realize where you are today and where you got to be tomorrow and drive, 300 miles to a show, wrestle 30 minutes and drive 300 miles back, you can't be all peeled up.
Yeah.
There's no way, and, not being a pill guy, I could see what it would do to you. It would, they're meant, pain pills are meant to take one, lay down, go sleep. Yeah.
Not function on it all day and operate heavy machinery.
Yeah. Don't take one first thing in the morning and then one at 2 and then one at 5 and then one at 11
or a handful ever.
Absolutely. And they were the scourge of our industry. They killed a lot of good people. I could see how easy it was to get hooked on them. Having a slow, which might have saved me, to be honest with you. I have such a slow metabolism. I mean, I've almost mastered the art like a horse. I could sleep standing up if I can just be still for a minute. I have that metabolism that it's easy for me to relax, which might have saved me because I remember once or twice taken, one of something like, so I could immediately go to sleep because we were getting in at 2:00 in the morning and we're having to leave again at 9 the next morning. We're going to be much time. So I'd take a Valium or something or whatever it was. And I'd be so hungover the next day that I just felt horrible.
Right.
Just had no threshold for it. So I never took them because I knew what they would do to me.
It's just it's such a shame because now, golly, marijuana is legal in like half the country, and we know, just CBD, how effective it can be. A lot of our listeners, myself included, they use CBD when they got a little ache or pain here or there. Maybe they need help getting to sleep, and that's totally legal and totally fine. But back then, man, you could get in trouble for that stuff. So guys turned to, well, I got a sheet of paper that says this is okay. And it's a shame because I don't know how we could expect guys to keep up this type of schedule, not like for a month, not like for a quarter, but for years. And in some cases, decades, and not feel like, hey, man, they're going to need a little something. But that little something, man, some of those little somethings are more harmful than others. And it's a shame that it changed. And I'm hopeful that we're a lot better now. These days, the schedule is a lot more lax. These days, the laws are a lot more lax. And the less guys who are walking around with that extra jingle because of those pill bottles, probably the better. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, I would. Yeah. And it was a dark time for our business and our industry. But let me tell you, it was in the time frame we're talking about now, man. It was tough. It was really tough. And it just was just by luck. And I'm going to be honest about this too. We had an unbelievable schedule and all that stuff, but we didn't take any of the high risk bumps that this generation of guys are doing now. I'm really worried about them. It's a whole nother subject, but I mean, even wrestling the Road Warriors, you were getting pounded, you were getting clotheslined, you were getting power slammed and all that, but you weren't doing moonsaults from the top rope out to the floor and hoping and praying that somebody's there to catch you. You know what I mean? So we protected ourselves as far as what we did recklessly or not recklessly during the match as best we could.
Well, let's talk about December. We're about to wrap up the month of December. And of course, we couldn't do that without talking about Christmas Day. And again, this is such a weird subculture because the rest of the world kind of shuts down on Christmas. You know, the stores aren't open, the restaurants aren't open. It's just time to be with your family, ... and watch pro wrestling. I don't know when and how that happened, but my whole life I've heard that Christmas night was either the number one night in the country for wrestling or number two, but it was Christmas and Thanksgiving. The two biggest American holidays are always 1 and 2. And there's never anything more evident than this. You guys ran 3 shows: Greenville, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, and the Omni. Now, Greenville and Charlotte were matinee shows, but the Omni, well, that's the evening show. And man, you guys had to be looking forward to this day, but also it might've been a little bittersweet because most everybody else would like to be home with their families. But if you did have a break, maybe you guys did Christmas a day or two early because it was time for daddy to go make the donuts, as they used to say, right?
Well, what we did, Charlotte was the matinee, which was absolutely marvelous. We just got up early and we did, and in this point in time, a lot of people had babies. This was the period where you had the Charlotte Flair, my son Barrett, you had, Cody Rhodes was being born, this whole group of babies that happened during this time. There was quite a few that are adults now, obviously. So we got up really early. We did Christmas with the kids. And then we went down to the Charlotte Coliseum, which was just a very short ride, did our show. And then we headed to the Omni that night. So we still got to have a piece of Christmas. And those 2 shows, let me tell you, you wanted to be on Charlotte and you wanted to be on the Omni that night because that paid for Christmas.
Yeah.
And was getting pretty close to paying for your January quarterly. So that was a nice chunk of change that day. You wanted to work those days.
Richmond, Virginia is a matinee show on the 26th. Detroit is going to get a show on the 26th, and so is Philadelphia. I guess everybody's got to get out there and spend that Christmas money. On the 27th, we're doing a TV taping here in Charleston, West Virginia. We're going to see Arn and Tully with JJ by their side take on Kendall Windham and Larry Stevens. After the match, Tony's going to conduct a ringside interview with JJ, Arn, and Tully. And they're going to brag about having all the gold, but the other teams are still just contenders. We'll be doing St. Louis for TV. It's a matinee show on the 28th. Here we're going to see David Crockett conducting an interview with Hayes, Garvin, and Precious about Hayes trying to chase the NWA World Champion Ric Flair. Of course, Arn and Tully are in the sights as well. But then there's another little angle here where we see Lex Luger beat Keith Steinborn with the torture rack in just a couple of minutes. But afterwards, Luger's got some pretty strong words about Arn Anderson and being part of the Bunkhouse Stampede finals. So everybody's looking for you guys, man. Everybody's gunning for you, but you finally get a little in-ring action on this TV taping with Ronnie Garvin, and Ron wins by DQ after 16 minutes. Tully's going to jump in and attack Garvin. And that's pretty rare in this era to have a 16-minute TV match. But you guys got it. I guess that wasn't uncommon on a live event, but for TV, that's a pretty big deal.
It is. That's quality TV time. It's a quality opponent, and you could do a lot of convincing when you got Ronnie Garvin out there for 16 minutes, because he was very convincing.
The dark match at that show is Michael Hayes and Jimmy Garvin beating Arn and Tully by DQ. And then Dr. Death is going to win another one of those Bunkhouse Stampedes. You'll wrap up the year in Savannah, Georgia on the 29th, Albuquerque, New Mexico on the same day, Johnson City, Tennessee on the 30th, and Chicago, Illinois on the 30th. What a loaded year. And it feels like after you're running all of these shows and you're running so hard, so heavy, you got to assume, man, I'm fixing to make the biggest paydays of my life. And as we know, it doesn't actually happen like that. In 1988, which is right around the corner, is going to wind up being your last set of matches with Jim Crockett Promotions. Would you have ever imagined as you end 1987, I'm wrapping up? It feels like you're on top. It feels like you're at the very peak. It doesn't feel like, well, I don't know how much longer this is going to last.
Well, I would have to go back and look, because that week from Christmas until New Year's, notoriously, is one of your bigger weeks in the business because the kids are out of school. Houses are usually good. I'd have to look at those paydays to see if the warning light was flashing yet, but I know this, they were using us to patch every possible hole that there was, to beef up every house show. It's like they don't need you till we need you.
Yeah.
Type scenario. And you can just look at some of the odd pairings and bookings. And, when you go out with Ronnie Garvin for 16 minutes and slug it out, you probably shouldn't have to go back out with Michael and Jimmy and wrestle them afterwards.
Yeah.
It's pretty anticlimactic for that. And you hurt the live event. After a period of time, you see that happen a couple times. You go back and think, well, I thought that match with Arn and Ronnie was something special, but shit, they're back out there at it again. It must not have been that special. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I think in the long run, when you do that to towns, you do them a disservice. You're not giving them more. You're kind of giving them less.
Well, we hope we're giving you more every week here on Arn. You get all these shows early and ad-free over at adfreeshows.com. And man, it's been such a fun time talking about 1987, but I got to be honest, I'm pumped about next week. We're going to talk about 1988. This is going to be the beginning of your very last year with Jim Crockett Promotions, because by the time you wind up coming back, well, JCP is no longer a thing and you're going to be working for Ted Turner. Maybe it was good timing. We'll find out next week right here on the show, but this was a fun episode, man. I know I had to miss a few weeks there, but I'm back in the rhythm with you. This was a good show. I had fun today.
Let me plug something if I could.
Please.
What's coming up pretty soon here is WrestleCon.
Oh, that's exactly right. You're going to be there, huh?
All 3 days.
Awesome.
I'm going to be there. And man, I can't tell you, all I hear, like this past Saturday, Brock had a match in Big Clover, South Carolina. Had the Hardys there, had Ricky Steamboat there, myself, Brock was there. Quite a few people for the little bitty town of Clover, South Carolina. Now we got this coming up. But point I'm trying to get to, I get to thank fans from around the world that I never had a chance to just go, hey, I had a career because of you guys. Thank you very, very much. I just want to shake your hand. If you want something signed, get a picture together, whatever it is. Thank you very, very much. And the first thing most of them say, Conrad, is, hey, I really enjoy you and Conrad on your podcast. It's different from everything else. I really get to hear how the business really was. So it's a good thing. And I'll get 3 good full days of it.
Check it out. It's WrestleCon. You know when it's happening. Wrestlemania weekend in Dallas. By the way, some of your other favorites are going to be there. Tully Blanchard's going to be there. So if you got some stuff from back in the heyday here in 87, like we've been talking about, you can get Arn to sign it. You can get Tully to sign it. He's got pictures, autographs, combos, the whole thing. And who knows, he may have a little extra at his table. Check it out. It's WrestleCon Wrestlemania weekend. That's March 31st, April 1st, on April 2nd. I'm going to be there. And well, everybody else you know is going to be there. So come join us at WrestleCon. And don't forget to check Arn out. AEW is still doing their thing. And man, a lot of people are curious about what's next for Arn Anderson. And my advice is stay tuned. How about that?
Good advice.
Let's do it. And stay tuned next week. We're going to be talking about January 1988, the good, the bad, the ugly, the Bunkhouse Stampede. Here we come next week, right here on Arn